I knew my 18-year marriage was in serious danger the exact second my mother-in-law pushed a handwritten weekly schedule across the dinner table. She sat there enjoying her roast pork while calmly informing me that I needed to submit my resignation at work within 2 weeks. On that bright yellow pad, she had meticulously mapped out my future, assigning me tasks for every single weekday from grocery runs to deep cleaning her house. Before we continue this unbelievable story, please make sure to hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss another dramatic real-life story on this channel. I sat motionless as I read the list twice, completely stunned that everyone else at the table was staring at their plates in total silence. My father-in-law had passed away 7 weeks prior, and while we were all grieving, I never expected his death to cost me my freedom. When I asked if this was some kind of joke, my husband lowered his eyes while his mother insisted that someone needed to step up and care for her. My husband Scott remained silent for a moment before suggesting that I was the obvious choice to take care of his mother full-time. Looking around the table at his brother Greg and his sister Samantha, I realized they had already discussed this entire scheme behind my back. Greg claimed he traveled too much for work, while Samantha insisted her teenagers took up all her free time, making me their designated sacrificial lamb. I reminded everyone at that table that I managed supply chains for a major regional hospital system and made over $120,000 a year. My mother-in-law sniffed dismissively, implying that my executive career was just a minor hobby compared to her personal comfort. That was the moment I realized my husband and his family viewed my life, my ambition, and my time as entirely expendable. When I flatly refused to abandon my career, the entire dinner fell apart into an uncomfortable, bitter silence. On the drive home, Scott accused me of utterly embarrassing his newly widowed mother in front of the entire family. I fired back that she had embarrassed herself by attempting to draft an unpaid servant without even asking, but Scott refused to see how horribly unfair the entire setup really was. As our argument escalated in the living room, Scott dropped a massive bombshell that completely shattered my trust in him. He admitted that before his father passed away, he had made a solemn vow that his mother would never be left in the hands of strangers. He had given his word using my time, my career, and my future without ever bothering to consult me first. The tension reached a boiling point when Scott coldly declared that if I could not make this sacrifice for his family, we should just get a divorce. He told me to quit my job or sign the papers, believing his aggressive ultimatum would finally force me to submit. Instead of breaking down, I quietly retrieved a pen from the kitchen drawer, tossed it onto the table, and asked where I should sign. That night I slept in the spare bedroom, crushed by the realization that nearly 2 decades of partnership meant absolutely nothing to him. The next morning, I sat in my car outside my office building and made an emergency appointment with a top family law attorney named Brenda. My coworker Brenda overheard me quiet on the phone later and reminded me that I needed to protect my own dignity. My meeting with the attorney was grounding, as she warned me that divorce should never be used as a weapon to teach a spouse a lesson. She advised me to gather all my financial documents, secure my personal assets, and take a step back before making any irreversible legal choices. Later that afternoon, when my mother-in-law called to lecture me about family loyalty, I calmly hung up the phone on her. By the end of the week, I decided to pack 2 large suitcases and rent a modest furnished apartment across town for 3 months. Scott stood in the doorway looking completely bewildered as I packed, entirely unable to grasp that his thoughtless ultimatum had pushed me out the door. Staying in that quiet apartment was painful, but it finally gave me the space I needed to breathe and think clearly. The reality of my absence hit Scott and his siblings like a freight train within the very first week. Greg called me in an absolute panic because he could not locate their mother's insurance paperwork, realizing for the first time how much invisible administrative work I had always handled. A day later, Samantha missed a critical medical appointment because she expected me to magically keep managing their mother's daily calendar. When my mother-in-law called late one evening demanding I drive over to fix her broken thermostat, I finally drew a hard line in the sand. I gave her the phone number for an emergency repair technician, refused to leave my apartment, and quietly hung up the receiver. For the first time in 18 years, I refused to let their endless panic become my personal emergency. 2 weeks into our physical separation, Scott showed up at my apartment door looking visibly exhausted, humbled, and completely defeated. He admitted that trying to manage his mother's life alongside his siblings had been an absolute nightmare of endless labor. He wept as he apologized for handing my life away to satisfy his own guilt, and promised to start hiring professional help immediately. Scott agreed to enter intensive marriage counseling, and accepted that I would not move back home until strict boundaries were permanently established. We still have a long path toward rebuilding our trust, but his family now understands that my life is entirely my own to control. Thank you so much for watching this story today. Which country are you watching this video from? Please let me know in the comments below. And do not forget to check out the next video on your end screen right now.